The massive lioness's muscles coiled like springs beneath her golden coat. Her amber eyes locked onto Marcus with the intensity of a predator who had already chosen her prey. 20 feet, that was all that separated him from death. His heart hammered against his ribs so violently he thought it might burst through his chest. The injured cub whimpered in his arms, its tiny body trembling, blood seeping through the makeshift bandage he'd fashioned from his torn shirt. But it wasn't just one lioness. No, that would have been merciful. 5 more emerged from the tall grass, the movement synchronized, deliberate, forming a perfect circle of death around him. Could they smell the fear radiating from every pore of his body? The acrid taste of terror filled his mouth as the lead lioness took a step forward, her massive paws silent on the dusty earth. The cub stirred weakly against his chest, letting out a pitiful mew that seemed to echo across the African savannah like a death knell. Marcus's legs trembled, threatening to buckle, but he wouldn't run. Not with this helpless creature depending on him. But how could he possibly explain to these apex predators that he was trying to save their young, not harm it? The largest lioness, she had to be the matriarch, unleashed a roar that vibrated through Marcus's bones, a sound so profound and menacing that birds erupted from nearby acacia trees in a panic cloud. His ears rang, his vision blurred. Every instinct screamed at him to drop the cub and run, but his arms only tightened protectively around the small, wounded body. That's when he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Fresh scratches on the matriarch's face, the kind made by hyena claws. These lions weren't just protective, they were already on edge from a recent battle. "Please," Marcus whispered, his voice cracking like dried leaves. "I'm trying to help." But his words were swallowed by another bone-rattling roar, this time from a lioness to his left. She crouched low, her tail swishing with deadly intent. This was it. This was how his story would end, torn apart for an act of kindness that would never be understood. But just as the lioness prepared to lunge, the cub in his arms did something extraordinary. The tiny lion lifted its head with tremendous effort and let out a distinctive call, not a cry of pain, but something else, something that made every adult lion freeze mid-motion. What happened next, no one could have predicted. Marcus had found the cub just 40 minutes earlier, caught in a poacher's snare, its hind leg mangled and bleeding. He'd been documenting wildlife for National Geographic when he heard the desperate cries. Now, that act of compassion seemed destined to be his final one. The cub's call hung in the air like a spell, and for a moment, just a heartbeat, the world stood still. Then the matriarch did something that defied every law of nature Marcus thought he knew. She sat down, not in submission, not in preparation to pounce, but with an almost regal dignity that suggested, was she actually listening to the cub? The other lionesses remained tense, their muscles rippling beneath their coats, but they too seemed to be waiting for something. The cub mewed again, weaker this time, and nuzzled against Marcus's chest. Its tiny tongue, rough like sandpaper, licked his hand. The same hand that had freed it from the wire that would have meant certain death. The matriarch's nostrils flared as she scented the air. Could she smell the blood? Not just the cub's blood, but Marcus's too. His palms were shredded from pulling apart the snare's sharp wire. Her massive head tilted, and in that moment, Marcus could have sworn he saw something shift in those ancient amber eyes. Recognition, understanding. Or was he simply projecting human emotions onto a creature that would devour him without a second thought? But he didn't realize the real danger had just arrived. A low growl rumbled from behind him, deeper, more menacing than anything the lionesses had produced. Marcus's spine turned to ice as he slowly turned his head. A massive male lion, his mane dark and full, stood at the edge of the circle. Scars crisscrossed his face like a roadmap of countless battles won. This was the pride's protector, and the fury radiating from him was palpable. The lionesses might have been willing to pause, to assess, but this warrior had already made his decision. The male lion's roar split the air like thunder, so powerful that Marcus felt it in his chest cavity, rattling his very soul. The cub whimpered and tried to burrow deeper into Marcus's arms, as if recognizing the voice of its father, a father who clearly didn't understand why a human was holding his offspring. The male took a step forward, then another, each movement deliberate and loaded with lethal intent. "Your baby is hurt," Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper, knowing the futility of his words but unable to stop them. "I was trying to help. Please look at the leg, the wire." I removed the wire. His hands trembled as he slightly adjusted his hold on the cub, trying to show the bandaged wound without making any sudden movements that might trigger an attack. The male lion's muscles bunched, preparing to charge. This was different from the lioness's calculated assessment. This was pure, protective rage. But just as Marcus closed his eyes, accepting his fate, something extraordinary happened. The injured cub, summoning strength from some deep reservoir of determination, lifted its tiny head and looked directly at its father. Then it did something that would be burned into Marcus's memory forever. The cub licked Marcus's face. It was a gesture so simple, yet so profound in its implications. In the language of lions, this was more than affection. It was a declaration of trust, a marking of family. The male lion stopped mid-stride, confusion replacing fury in his magnificent features. His massive head swung toward the matriarch as if seeking confirmation of what he was witnessing. Could this really be happening? The matriarch rose with fluid grace and began walking toward Marcus. Each step was measured, purposeful. Marcus's breath caught in his throat as she approached, close enough now that he could see the individual whiskers on her face, feel the heat radiating from her powerful body. She was so close he could smell the wild scent of her, earth and grass and something anciently feline. His every muscle screamed at him to run, but he remained frozen, the cub still clutched to his chest. Then she did something that challenged everything Marcus thought he knew about wild animals. She sniffed the cub thoroughly, her investigation meticulous and thorough. Her massive nose traced the bandage, paused at the spots where Marcus's blood had mixed with the cub's. Her breathing was hot against his arms, and he could feel the controlled power in every exhalation. Then her attention shifted to Marcus himself. She sniffed his hands, the torn, bloody hands that had fought the snare. She smelled his shirt, saturated with the cub's scent and blood. Her investigation was methodical, almost scientific in its thoroughness. What was she looking for? Evidence of harm, proof of his intentions. Marcus would never know for certain. But what happened next suggested she found her answer. The matriarch sat back on her haunches and released a sound Marcus had never heard from a lion before. A low, rumbling purr that seemed to vibrate through the earth itself. It wasn't the domestic purr of a house cat, but something deeper, more primordial, like the earth itself was expressing contentment. Keep watching to witness a miracle that will challenge everything you thought you knew. One by one, the other lionesses approached. Not with aggression, but with what could only be described as curiosity mixed with something resembling gratitude. They sniffed the cub, then Marcus, their investigation gentle despite their overwhelming power. One lioness, younger than the others, actually rubbed her massive head against Marcus's shoulder. A gesture so unexpected, so impossibly tender, that tears sprang to his eyes. The male lion was the last to approach. His movements were still wary, still protective, but the murderous rage had dissipated. When he was close enough that Marcus could count the scars on his battle-worn face, the great cat did something that would haunt Marcus's dreams for years to come. He looked directly into Marcus's eyes, not with the blank stare of an animal, but with something that felt startlingly like acknowledgement, like recognition of one protector to another. Marcus slowly, carefully, placed the injured cub on the ground between himself and the pride. The little one tried to stand but wobbled on its injured leg. Before Marcus could reach out to steady it, the matriarch moved forward and gently picked up the cub in her massive jaws. her grip so tender it spoke of a mother's infinite capacity for gentleness despite possessing the power to crush bone. But the pride didn't leave. Instead, they did something that defied every wildlife documentary Marcus had ever watched. They formed a protective circle around him, not to trap him, but to shield him. From what? That's when Marcus heard it, the whooping call of hyenas in the distance, the same hyenas that had left those scratches on the matriarch's face. The pride wasn't just acknowledging his act of kindness, they were reciprocating it. For the next hour, Marcus sat in the center of a lion pride as they stood guard. The surreal nature of the situation wasn't lost on him. He, a fragile human, being protected by nature's most fearsome predators. The injured cub, now safely in its mother's care, would occasionally look over at Marcus with eyes that seemed far too knowing for such a young creature. As the sun began to set, painting the savannah in shades of gold and crimson, the matriarch approached Marcus one final time. She dropped something at his feet. A portion of their kill from earlier, a gesture of sharing that went against every instinct these solitary hunters possessed. It was an offering, a thank you in the only way she knew how to give it. Marcus's hands shook as he touched the gift, understanding the magnitude of what had just transpired. This wasn't just tolerance, this was acceptance. This was trust. As the pride finally began to move away, each lion passed by Marcus with deliberate intention. Some brushed against him with their tails, others simply made eye contact. Each gesture a farewell, an acknowledgement of the bridge that had been built between species in this extraordinary moment. The injured cub, carried in its mother's jaws, managed one last look back, and Marcus could have sworn he saw gratitude in those young eyes. If you believe this incredible act of loyalty deserves to be seen, leave a comment below. The male lion was the last to leave. He paused a few feet from Marcus and turned back, his magnificent mane catching the last rays of sunlight. For a long moment, predator and protector regarded each other across the void of species and instinct. Then the lion did something Marcus would spend the rest of his life trying to understand. He bowed his massive head just slightly, just enough to be intentional. A king acknowledging a subject, a warrior saluting another, or simply one father recognizing another's protective instinct. Marcus sat alone on the savannah as darkness fell, his mind reeling from what had transpired. His torn hands throbbed, his heart still raced, but something fundamental had shifted in his understanding of the world. The boundaries between human and animal, between civilization and wildness, suddenly seemed arbitrary, constructed by humans who had forgotten that we all share the same capacity for compassion, for recognition, for love. 3 weeks later, Marcus returned to the same spot with proper medical supplies, hoping against hope to check on the cub. What he found exceeded his wildest dreams. The pride was there, lounging in the afternoon sun. The cub, its leg healing but still bearing a slight limp, was the first to notice him. It bounded over, not with fear, but what could only be described as joy. The matriarch followed, that same rumbling purr emanating from her chest. That day, Marcus did something no wildlife photographer had ever done. He sat among the pride and tended to the cub's wound while its family watched. They trusted him completely, this human who had proven that kindness knows no species, that compassion needs no common language. As he worked, carefully cleaning and rebandaging the wound, the other cubs grew curious, approaching to sniff and investigate this strange, gentle creature their parents had accepted. The healing would take months, and Marcus returned whenever he could. Each visit deepened the impossible bond, until the pride began to treat him not as an intruder or even a guest, but as something unprecedented, a member. They would hunt while he was there, share their kills, let him document their most intimate moments. The injured cub, now healing strongly, would often sleep pressed against him, its purrs vibrating through his body like a lullaby of trust. This story teaches us that kindness is the universal language that transcends every barrier nature has constructed. In a world that often seems divided by insurmountable differences, sometimes all it takes is one act of compassion to reveal the profound connections that bind all living things. Share this with someone who needs a dose of hope today, and their story is far from over.